A whiplash-inducing day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast has just released some official spoilers for the upcoming Duskmourn set, and they are insane, especially in terms of tone. When you see the differences between them, you're going to wonder if they actually come from the same set. And we also have some very interesting magic oddities that have just appeared to discuss.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered to take a look at some crazy mega magic news items. We have Duskmourn spoilers. I wasn't expecting this yesterday when we talked about the commander deck names and all that. I thought it was going to be a bit before we got some Duskmourn action, but lo and behold, we've got multiple spoiler cards today. Apparently, they're going to be doing their first look tomorrow, even though they gave us a first look today. Kind of funny how that works, but if you've been sitting there going, having a bit of a breather between Thunder Junction and the next set, well, remember, Big Score was supposed to be in the middle. So we are going back to the breakneck pace, right? We've got Bloomborough coming out basically at the end of July. Right after that, in the end of September, we've got Duskmourn showing up going, prepare to be horrified. And I have to say, some of the stuff we're going to look at today is definitely not going to horrify you. You're actually going to go, wait, this feels kind of cutesy. What's the deal? But that out of the way, let us dive in and take a look at the first spoiler card. This is Overlord of the Haunt Woods, and this is an incredibly interesting card. 2 green and 3 for a 6/5 enchantment creature avatar horror. It's literally an avatar of pure horror. It has the ability Impending 4, and that costs 2 green and 1. And it says, whenever Overlord of the Hauntwood enters or attacks, create a tapped colorless land token named Everywhere that is every basic land type. So this card leaves you with a ton of questions. One being, what happened to the borders on this card? Well, what we're looking at is a special Japanese treatment of the card. So going forwards, Wizards has decided to basically do 10 Japanese style variants in each set. So this will be a regular occurrence, I guess, on top of special guests and the bonus sheets that they do. They really are layering in a bunch of different options. But I have to admit, I really dig these Japanese style cards. So the border is actually represented by that tiny little green line above the name of the creature, and then the tiny little green line below the creature type, and the tiny green line that actually encircles the power and toughness and runs along the bottom of the card. So they said the reason they're doing this is they want to let the Japanese art have room to breathe and really stand out. And it does work. Having the little indicators to show its color identity, I have zero problem with that. That is fantastic. Obviously, the creating a tapped colorless land token is wild. The fact that it counts as every basic land type is going to have anybody who wants to play Domain hyped, right? It basically taps for every color of mana, and you get this every time the guy swings and when he comes into play. But the big question is, what is impending? Now, we don't actually know yet, but I have a pretty good guess on this one. Basically, the way this set works is it's going to have a thick enchantment theme to it. So the way it appears this is going to work is this is going to be similar to cards that we've seen with Suspend. However, the suspending will happen while it's in play. So the way it looks to me is, if you cast this for its impending cost, you put it out as an enchantment. So essentially you would pay 2 green and 1, When he comes out as an enchantment. So he's not a creature. You can't attack with him. You can't block with him. It basically just triggers the entering the battlefield ability, where you get to go and create a tapped colorless land token. Because traditionally, in Magic the Gathering, it will cost you about 3 mana to ramp yourself a land. And that gives you a cheap way to access this creature. You pay 3 mana, you put it out, you get a land token, and then each turn you remove an impending counter on it. So when it comes out, it'll come out with 4 impending counters on it. Remove one. When you remove the last, it no longer counts as an enchantment. So it'll probably have the wording of, as long as it has an impending counter on it, it does not count as a creature, which actually leaves some fun room when it comes to stuff like proliferate, where you could actually proliferate your opponent's impending cards to slow down that impending doom, because that's the idea, right? Duskmourn is a gigantic house of horror. So you can have this Hauntwoods Overlord basically showing you his presence. You know he's somewhere around, but you don't know where. The landscape is changing, announcing that he is coming. But then you've got turns of fearing it, the trepidation of the arrival of this gigantic, many-armed horror. Like, that is actually a really great concept when it comes to creating that, like, the suspense, the fear that you would have in a horror world where some gigantic being is coming for you, but not yet, because horror movies never have them come for you right away, or else the movie wouldn't make it to an hour and a half, right? So they got to drag it out. Same kind of deal. But you can also accelerate him coming out by having other ways to remove counters from him. And then once you have him out in all his glory, you've got a 6/5. Every time you're swinging with it, you're creating more and more land tokens. I really like the design space that this card is playing with. And part of the reason that I believe he starts as an enchantment is because the other stuff we're going to look at is also enchantment themed. So one other thing I very much enjoy about this piece of artwork is take a look at the expansion symbol. It's a butterfly, right? Which feels a little bit weird. Butterflies are fragile, beautiful creatures, and we're going to be dealing with what presumably is going to be a horrific, ugly world. The artwork we're all going to look at today is like Japanese, more friendly, almost like Studio Ghibli style artwork, especially when we look at the other Overlord, you're going to get that vibe. But I love the fact that he's reaching out, and it looks like his hand is reaching out to crush that butterfly. Also, what's going on in the background there? Is that some kind of creature falling, or is that a spirit that just flies around him? The insectile nature of the Overlord with his like 7, 8, 9, 10 different arms and a bunch of skittering legs underneath. Would you hear the sound of those skittering legs as it gets closer and closer, somehow embedded in the essence of the actual house? And when we look at the artwork as well, you're going to see, as we look through the cards, there looks like Duskmourn is actually going to be a very, very large building with a bunch of different areas. So we have spoiler cards, but they also gave us artwork that goes along with some of these spoiler cards without the card text. So we also have the Overlord of the Fire Bilges. What's it called? The Overlord, sorry, of the Boiler Bilges. I'm getting it confused with yesterday's Bloom Boiler spoilers. So Overlord of the Boiler Bilges. So this is gonna be the red one. Look at the artwork. It very clearly screams that. And again, it does have a Studio Ghibli vibe to it. So it's curious to kind of try and figure out what this one would do. I presume they're gonna go straight forward with it and have it do damage when it comes into play. So you can play it on the cheap. It does damage, and then every time it swings, it does damage. We've seen that on a number of different cards, a la Inferno Titan, right? Like, that is a winning combination. It feels good to be able to play it for burn in the first place, and then have a big beef boy who can swing. So I expect he's probably going to have the same casting cost of 5 mana, do 3 damage, probably have impending 4 as well. This is all guesswork, right? Because we don't have specifics. But that's the vibe it gives. I do very much love the idea of these Overlords. Now that we've talked about creatures that go from being an enchantment to being a creature, let's talk about the reverse. Take a look at Enduring Tenacity. This is 2 black and 2 for for a 4/3 enchantment creature, Snake Glimmer. Now, I don't believe Glimmer has ever been a creature type in Magic the Gathering, and I think this is going to be something they use to tie into the thematic concept of the mechanics of the creature. So, how does it work? Well, Enduring Tenacity has the ability, whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. And I read that again, I'm like, wait a minute. That's Sanguine Bond. Sanguine Bond is an enchantment that costs 2 black and 3 to get the same effect. But for this, for 4 mana, you're getting a 4/3 with that ability tacked on. The power creep is very, very real. And the rest of the card says, whenever Enduring Tenacity dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's an enchantment. So this comes back full on as a Sanguine Bond. So you pay 4 mana, get a 4/3, and even if your opponent manages to destroy it, because you might have thought to yourself at first, well, yeah, it's got Sanguine Bond's ability, but enchantments are way harder to get rid of, and getting rid of creatures is easy. Well, if you don't exile this guy and you just make him die, well, guess what? He comes back as an enchantment sticking around, and he's got that Sanguine Bond ability. It feels absolutely bonkers to me. Like, this is super power level nonsense here, right? Take a look at this is the level of mythics that we're going to see. Now, the artwork is where I said that you're going to feel some disparity, some wait for the whiplash when we look at the other enduring ones, because man, they do not have a House of Horrors vibe, right? Look at this snake. He looks very happy. I think the idea behind these glimmers is that they're supposed to be friendly spirits, and they'll help you out in their somewhat corporeal forms, but once they basically get destroyed, their essence is embedded into the world. Maybe it's that Duskmourn won't let your soul leave, right? Once you die, it kind of ensnares your soul, and there's something about these glimmer spirit animals that lets them stick around. But just like the Overlord, we actually have artwork of some of the other Enduring cards as well. So you have Enduring Curiosity, which is a blue cat doing a little fruity dance that makes me think of Yuna from Final Fantasy X2, if you guys get the reference, right? Where she does the spirit dance across the water, whoa, 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 making the spirits fly up into the sky. Like, this does not feel like a horror card at all. The background, yeah, it does have kind of a dark gloominess to it, but I'm presuming this is probably going to be some enchantment along the lines of things we've seen in the past that let you draw a card whenever you like connect with the creature hitting your opponent. Although I'm not sure if that power level is quite high enough. It'll depend on the power and toughness and casting cost of this little cat guy. But you can see this is some super cutesy artwork, and I don't think that the regular versions we get of these cards are going to look like this. I think they're going to, well, they'll probably still have some kind of friendly vibe, but this is very cartoonish Ghibli vibe, right? Then we have Enduring Courage, and this is the red wolf dog one. From the artwork, it kind of feels like he might be dealing with artifacts. I'm not 100% on that. The courage part could equal your creatures having haste. It could equal them having a power bonus. Who knows? It might theoretically operate something like a sneak attack where you can actually just pop creatures out and then they get offed at the end of the turn. There is a lot of possibilities for this. I feel like this is going to be one a ton of people want because people absolutely love dogs. You can actually see them raving over on the Magic Arena Reddit because they just put up a brand new bundle where you can buy all the dog sleeves and all the dog companions. And people are like, oh yeah. And I get that because you know what? I'm a dog person myself. I like dogs way more than cats. Cats are too standoffish for me. I want a pal who's going to run up and lick my face and who's happy to see me all the time, right? And this little red guy here, he gives that vibe. So, the least scary of all of these so far, because we get to see 4 out of 5 of them, has to be Enduring Innocence. This is your little white lamb creature. Now, I have literally no concept of what this one is going to be responsible for. And you can see a bunch of objects flying around this one too. So they all have almost like a Kamigawa vibe with the little objects that float about. But I'm really trying to figure out what it is the lamb does. I don't know if the ability is something like stopping your opponent from being able to attack with multiple creatures. Maybe they can only attack with 1 or 2 creatures a turn. What's really interesting to me about this artwork in specific is the fact that it literally is blurry behind the lamb. Like when we looked at the other creatures, they didn't have any effect on the background behind them. But if you take a look at the doorway behind the lamb and the carpet that's on the floor, you can see that it's literally warping reality, which is a testament to the power level of these. And it is a fun concept of having unexpected help. You end up in this world of Duskmourn, this giant house of horrors that theoretically, as a planeswalker, might not even let you leave. Who knows if it's going to have that same kind of vibe they had on Ixalan with the Immortal Sun, where once you're there, you can't leave. And so we're dealing with planeswalkers trying to escape. But on the other hand, Wizards of the Coast has reduced the presence of planeswalkers considerably. We see them only 1 or 2 a set now, and I'm suspecting that the story is going to move further away from that. Wizards does care enough about the story that they're doing focus groups with people now, trying to figure out how much they know about the story. I don't know if this is going to lead to them leaning in harder to the story or them just going more Thunder Junction style where the story doesn't matter. But ultimately, I'm very interested in the duality of all of these enchantment creatures. You have creatures that will start out as enchantments, then turn into creatures, and those are the bad guys. You have the ones that start as creatures and turn into enchantments, and those are the good guys. That's the way that it's coming across to me. I think these spoilers are pretty interesting. I'm curious to see what we're going to get to look at when they do the grand reveal tomorrow. So tomorrow, I'll be right back with some more cards to talk about. Now that we've talked about all of the stuff surrounding Duskmourn right now, let us move into some of the funky oddities that have been put up for sale. I don't know how many of you guys are old school enough to remember these sweet little booklets, but I'm a magical dinosaur. I started playing Magic back in 1994. It's been over 30 years now, because I started playing about the beginning of June, actually. So it's been over 30 years since I started playing Magic. And at the beginning, this is what you would get to teach you everything you needed about Magic. And they had different iterations: 4th edition, 5th edition, Ice Age, Mirage. And, at a certain point, these became dead weight to you. You got these inside of starter decks. They were great to help you figure out some basics of Magic. They certainly didn't cover everything. It's not like the glory days of now, where you can literally look up any card you want like that and have the Oracle wording to the point where Wizards can be, you know what? We're going to drop the power and toughness off of creatures, like they did with the Sakura Tribe Elder that I showed in yesterday's video, right? So these booklets are a big part of Magic's history. I have a whole range of them. It's not just rule books. They actually also had storybook versions. So this is the Tempest storybook. This is really cool, actually. I love that they did this. And then you also have strategy guides. So they'd have strategy guides that are specifically for sets, but then you'd also have guides that were for theme decks as well. So you had the whole range of these, right? Like, I have a ton of these little booklets. I actually thought it'd be a lot of fun to get a tiny little bookshelf to keep these on, but I haven't found anything appropriate. Anyhow, the reason that I'm bringing that up is original Alpha Edition booklets like this, for the first time in Magic's history, have actually been slabbed like graded cards. So there's, take a look at the image. There's a graded 10 one and a graded 9.5. Magic has become such a big phenomenon that these booklets are currently being listed for $300 for the 9.5 version and $500 for the perfect Gem Mint 10 Alpha rule book. I literally have no idea what the population of Alpha rule books is. How many of them have survived 30 years versus how many were even initially printed, right? So this is a very funky piece of Magic's history. And I have another funky piece of Magic's history to show you in the form of this crazy trophy that was given to Wizards of the Coast by IGN as an award for Mirrodin's design, which is, pretty interesting on one hand, but what I found really interesting is this is up for sale now. And the reason it came up for sale is a former Wizards employee came into possession of it and decided they were going to sell it now that they're not working at the company anymore. But the most interesting part about this to me completely is that there is something called the free table at Wizards of the Coast. That's how the employee got that. It was just sitting on a table for anybody to take. And I wonder what other glorious pieces of Magic's history do they just throw on a table and go, oh, who cares about this? Like, how do you even end up to the point where the company's like, we don't care about these awards? Or was the person it was given to, they just went, I don't even care, man. Left it behind when they stopped working there? Do you have a whole pile of this kind of stuff and it doesn't mean anything to you? Or is it just a matter of there's employees at Wizards of the Coast who don't care that they work at Wizards of the Coast? Like, it's just a job to them. So it's like if you worked in a call center and they gave the call center an award and you're just like, yeah, no, I don't need this. I don't care about this. So it just gets thrown on the table. It's just nutty to me that random pieces of Magic history go on something called the free table, because this one was put on the free table a few years back, and it's for Mirrodin, right? Which was like, was that decades ago? Oh, I'm aging in real time. My bones are no longer hurting because they've literally turned to dust. So yeah, it's wild to me that they have that as a free table concept, and I thought you guys would find that interesting too. But that wraps up all the news that I have for today. Thanks for coming by. Big shout out to my patrons. You guys rule. And I will see you all for the next video, which will actually be tomorrow, with more Duskmourn action. Goodbye for now.